should Tennessee throw the SEC tournament? I mean, chuck it. Not even try to win. Purposely try to go home. And I'm making the argument, yes. And I'm making it for a couple of reasons. 3 reasons, actually. The first and the biggest and most important one to me is that they need to get healthy and fresh. I do think they're healthy, but you saw against Kentucky last Saturday, because Rick Barnes plays his starters so many minutes, in particular Zakai Ziegler, the mental drain of beating 3 ranked teams in a row to win the SEC took its toll, and they weren't as quick coming off the screens, defending the perimeter shot, and that's why they got torched by Kentucky. So they need to get rest. The second reason is the NCAA selection committee over the past few years has shown they're not even weighing the conference tournaments anymore. The only impact the conference tournament has is if you win it, they'll put you in. But they have not factored it into their seeding at all. And it's been really weird and I think problematic that they've done that because they've devalued the conference tournaments, but it's not Tennessee's fault that they've decided to not take those into account. And third, and most importantly, I think the difference between a number 1 and number 2 seed is minuscule. I don't think it's a big deal. And I think Tennessee would actually almost rather be a number 2 seed in the South region than a number 1 seed in the West region in the NCAA tournament, if you're asking me.
Jimmy?
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit. The NCAA selection committee arbitrarily determine if you win the tournament or you make a run, sometimes they reward you and sometimes they don't. They're inconsistent like they are with almost everything they do. Now, to Caleb's point about whether you're a 1 or 2 seed, to be honest with you, I don't really think that does matter. If you're a 2 seed in a certain region, you get to go to Charlotte and then Dallas, versus if you're 1 seed, maybe it's Charlotte and Los Angeles. So if you're Tennessee, you'd probably rather go to Dallas. There's a pretty good contingent of Tennessee alums in Dallas, and you'll get a better crowd there. So from that perspective, it would help you to do that. Being a number 1 seed would be a program first. So I think that would be a nice feather in your cap. But that doesn't matter if you lose in the second round, does it? So I do not have a problem with being a number 2 seed versus a number 1. I am interested in this, and I hadn't done the research on it. I wonder how many teams lost in the first round of their conference tournament and then made the Final Four. I don't know the answer to that. Caleb, you may have done the research on that. I don't know that answer. I don't think it's necessary for Tennessee to win the SEC tournament and still be a 1 seed. I think if Tennessee wins a first round game in the NCAA tournament, they're going to be a 1 seed. Unless Arizona wins the Pac-12 tournament, then that might change things. But I think if Tennessee wins 1 game in the SEC tournament, they're in pretty good shape. I would not feel good about losing the first round game and just tanking it. I don't like that. I don't like that approach.
I'm of the mindset, Jimmy, that if you get to Saturday, there's no way logistically that the NCAA selection committee can shift everybody around because let's say you beat Kentucky by 50 on a Sunday. I mean, you've already got 99% of the bracket done unless there's an upset. My take would just be Saturday. It's also our poll question. It's on the YouTube page. Tennessee would be better off, 1, losing the first game in the SEC tournament, winning 1 game in the SEC tournament, winning 2 games in the SEC tournament, or winning it all. Winning it all gets 61%, winning 1 or 2 games, but 17%, losing the first game in the SEC tournament gets 6%. Jimmy, we've had Ron Slay on the program, and he admitted, not throwing it, but he admitted that they weren't too excited about the SEC tournament and that they knew the NCAA tournament was how they would be judged. And they were a little bit lackluster. We saw that, but he confirmed it on this program that they weren't into it. I don't think it feels like a Barnes approach to not be into any game. He feels to me like the type of guy who, if there's a game of chess, checkers, or basketball, you ought to go out there and try to win.
I agree with that. Now, I'll also say there's a potential that has been to his detriment. I have talked to several coaches, and I've asked them, why does Rick Barnes win more than 67% of his games, but he's a 500 coach in the NCAA tournament, and he has lost to teams in which he has been a significant favorite in the NCAA tournament? And every one of them I talked to, there's only a handful, said that he works them too hard late in the year. They have 2 hour or too long of practices. They have 1 hour film sessions instead of 30-minute film sessions. And one coach said one reason Gene Cady at Purdue always had early exits is he had 2 hour practices and 1 hour film sessions. And Bob Knight would cut it down to 1 hour practices and 30-minute film sessions to make sure his players were rested. And the coaches I talked to said Barnes leans more toward the Gene Cady approach. That's not worked. Now, is he backed off some recently? Will he back off this year a little bit? I don't know. It typically has not been his approach, but I do think you need to have a team that's rested, not just physically, but mentally, which is why I don't care if they win the SEC tournament, but I don't like the idea of losing in the first round. If you're going to lose in the second round, at least put up some effort.
Yep. And Caleb, I want to get your thoughts on, because I know you're one that thinks the less basketball in Nashville, the better. My take is that it's more about the practices. I think an 18 to 24-year-old now can play basketball every single day and be fine. I think it's the practices that are more the issue. And I've been told the same thing that Jimmy has.
So compromise. What do you guys think about maybe
By the way, I've never heard Caleb say the word compromise, just for the record.
I'm fine with compromise. I am fine with compromise. I'm going to be the Henry Clay of this show, if anybody knows history.
A day older, a day wiser.
So what I would say is, what if you guys say go all out in the NCAA tournament, but this time do load management in the sense of Rick Barnes says, I'm not going to play any of my starters more than 22 minutes in any SEC tournament game. I'm not going to, would you guys be okay with that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, regardless of how the game goes, for Rick Barnes to say, they're not logging any more than 22 minutes is the max. And if they hit that 22 minutes, I'm pulling them no matter what.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
That's interesting. Jim, I wonder what the SEC would say about that. Jimmy Hyams' appearance each and every Wednesday is brought to you by our good friends at Ray Varner Ford.
F-150 4x4 Super Cab, $44,992. A 2023 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $30,952. 2023 F-150 4x4 Super Crew XLT, $54,900. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Jimmy, what would the SEC say about that?
Nothing.
You don't think they'd say anything, really?
Nope. What are they going to do? Rick Barnes, you're not coaching right. And he's going to say, I've won 802 games, Greg Sankey. How many you won? So I don't. Well, and think about this. And I don't know if anything was said to him. I believe I'm right about this. So Southern Indiana was playing in the conference tournament championship against UT Martin. UT Martin rested 4 starters because Southern Indiana could not represent the conference in the NCAA tournament because they haven't been in the Division I level enough years. It's like you got to be there 3 years, and this is their second year. So UT Martin knew that they were going to go to the NCAA tournament. Even though they're a 500 team, they rested 4 of their starters so that they could prepare for the NCAA tournament. That was the approach that they wanted to take. Now, to Caleb's point, if you played your starters 14 minutes a game and rested them, okay. But 22, I think that's a reasonable number. And I don't have any problem with that. I think that would be perhaps a wise way to approach it to make sure that you do have your legs underneath you.
Pretty interesting. All right. Well, if you had to choose, though, guys, between the two of you, well, I know Caleb's going to choose get blasted in the first round, right, Caleb?
Get wrecked in the first round. Just get wrecked.
Okay. Get wrecked in the first round or lose a close one in the finals. I'm going to go with Caleb, get wrecked in the first round.
So there's not an in-between?
There's no in-between. You got to do one of the
I can't cavalier the question and say win the first round game and then lose after that. If I had my choice in that regard, I'd probably lean toward losing in the first round. But my problem is this, and it goes back to Dave, what you were alluding to. What if you lose in the first round and Barnes is still practicing them 2 hours a day and 1 hour film sessions? What have you accomplished?
Probably a second round exit in the NCAA tournament.
So if you lose in the first round, and if you back off your practices, and if you limit your film sessions, okay, I'll take a first round loss. But you've mitigated that if you continue to practice hard and long and have long film sessions.
It's interesting. I like the way you think, Jimmy, and I can't believe that you and Caleb almost agree. I think this is the first time.